Well, our drivability problem this time is on a Chrysler vehicle, Jim. And what we've got is we've got the kind of that rotten egg smell or odor coming out of the tailpipe, the poor fuel economy, and the driver just complained about the throttle response just isn't what it used to be. Now, I used the key method to pull the codes on the car. On, off, on, off, on. I came up with a code 22. And when I looked in our book, a code 22 said O2 system full rich or full lean. So boy, we know where to start, don't we?
We sure do. It's in the oxygen sensor circuit, but we don't really know where. Could be a wire, a computer problem, could even be the oxygen sensor itself. So best thing to do is remove it from the vehicle and take a look at it and see what color it is. Maybe that will help us determine the problem.
Sure. There's three things that you can do to an oxygen sensor. First thing is you can perform a visual inspection. Second thing is you can do an on-the-bench test. And the third thing is you can test it on the vehicle, and we'll do all three of those right now.
Well, let's take a look at the colors first. Here's one we took from a vehicle that has sort of a grayish color. You can see a little bit of a coating on it, but that's normal, Scott. That shows just it's been in there for a long time doing its job, and it has normal combustion type color.
Okay.
Now here's another one that is normal also. It doesn't have quite the amount of deposits on. It's got a slightly reddish tint to it, and that reddish color comes from the gasoline additives that we have nowadays. So that's a pretty good looking oxygen sensor too. It's just been in there a long time doing its job, and we had to replace it just as normal maintenance.
Okay.
But here's one that's all black. See that rich black color? And that comes from an over-rich mixture. And it has coated the whole thing with carbon.
Yep.
So maybe this is part of the problem that we're having on the vehicle that you just described.
Okay, now we've got some lighter colored ones over here too.
Yeah, now this one here is just a slight hint of gray, and it looks like someone's been running leaded gas in this car.
Okay, and that'll contaminate the sensor, and that could create our problem that we're having right now. The sensor is not as active as it used to be because it is now contaminated by leaded fuel.
Right. And the last one here that we can look at is one that's kind of a chalky white color. And this usually shows contamination from using antifreeze that's leaking through the head gasket someplace, or anywhere where it gets into the cylinders.
Sure.
Sometimes using a silicone-based sealing compound that is not the right type will also cause this type of contamination. So silicone or antifreeze will turn them white.
Okay. Now, how about our bench test? We finished our inspection and determined that, let's check this one right here. This one came out of the vehicle, and you said it looked fairly well.
Yeah, it really did. Now, doing it on the bench simply requires the use of a propane torch and also a voltmeter, a digital voltometer.
Okay.
Now, the whole idea here will be to put the tip of the oxygen sensor into the flame where there is no oxygen. Now, on the car, an oxygen sensor that's detecting a lean mixture will produce a low voltage, and one that's detecting a rich mixture will produce a high voltage. Now, there's no oxygen in the flame, so that's kind of like a rich mixture. So as we stick it in the flame, the voltage should come up. And as I pull it out of the flame, the voltage should go down. And that's our test. But there's a time limit on this. When I put it in the flame, the oxygen sensor must be able to produce 9/10 of a volt within 1 minute. And when I pull it out of the flame, the voltage must drop within 3 seconds to where it was before. It's a very, very simple test, and we can do that together right now.
All right. The other thing we're doing is we're actually heating the oxygen sensor tip to 600 degrees Fahrenheit, which has to be done for a bench test or an on-the-car test, either way. Before we light the torch, I'm just going to put my safety glasses on, and we'll get this lit. I'll point this away from us. Okay, we have that lit now.
I'm turning the voltmeter on to the lowest voltage scale, the 2-volt scale, because these oxygen sensors only produce about 1 volt or so.
Sure.
So you need to be on your low scale. Then we're going to connect the red lead of the voltmeter to the wire end, in this case, or the terminal that you would have. And you must remember to use the black wire. Sometimes an oxygen sensor has more than 1 wire. Some have little heaters in. So always remember to use the solid black wire.
Good point.
And then connect your ground lead of the voltmeter to the shell of the oxygen sensor. You can just hold it like this.
Okay.
Now I'll insert it in the flame, and we'll see if this oxygen sensor can produce 9/10 of a volt within 1 minute.
Okay. Well, it's already starting to produce a voltage. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9/10 of a volt already.
Okay, so far
1
so
volt.
good.
Yep.
So I'm going to pull it out of the flame and we'll see if it drops.
1001, 1002, 1003. And it's right back down to 0.008 and dropping.
Okay, great. So I think that this one here, although it still functions, has just been in there quite a long time and was replaced just because of maintenance. So this is a good oxygen sensor, and that's how you can tell if they're good or bad right on the bench.
Okay.
Now, one thing I'll do, though, is put this down into an ashtray or someplace where it can cool off, because they're quite hot for a while.
All right. Now, there's an on-the-vehicle test that can be performed also. And why don't we head out in the garage and show them that one?
Okay.
Now, along with a simple bench test, you can also test your O2 sensor right on the vehicle. And we're going to demonstrate that right now, right, Jim?
That's right. Now, basically what we're going to need, Scott, is a voltmeter set on the 2-volt scale because the O2 sensor produces a very small voltage. And I'm going to connect the voltmeter first to a good ground. The negative lead gets connected to a good engine ground.
Sure.
And then I'm going to reach over and unplug the O2 sensor lead and connect the positive lead of the voltmeter to the O2 sensor's lead. Now we'll be able to measure the voltage while it's right in the engine. Now we're going to have to run the vehicle and change the air-fuel mixture ratio. The simple way to do that would just be to create a vacuum leak.
Sure.
And there's a vacuum port right here on the top of this engine with a little rubber cap on. So if you have one of these on your car, there's a little clip that you can use a pair of pliers to remove and get that out of the way, and then simply pull the little boot off. And that will create the vacuum leak that you need to change the mixture. So I'll start the car, and we'll do that.
All right.